Alright guys, I did not give up on that board yet. This is a quick follow-up to my video on the S17 Plus boards that I could not figure out. I was able to troubleshoot it and get to that chip that was testing as bad, so I was shorting the signal on the before the chip. So this is chip number 10 under the heatsink right here. This is chip number 10, and this chip right here is chip number 11. And so I took the heatsink off, fully expecting that the heat from the heat gun would bring that chip back, but it's still testing as 0. So I'm gonna test some test points real quick before and after, and see if I can figure out what's going on. So here we go. So I'm gonna basically put my reference on the heatsink of the previous chip, and then measure in these test points, measure the clock, CI. I'm gonna skip the RO, so clock, CI, then jump to reset and BI or a BO, whatever you want to call it. All right, here we go. So I got 0.9, 1.68, 1.71, and 1.61. So this is bad, obviously. 1.61. The tester did stay at 0 this whole time. So maybe we need to investigate a little bit more. So let's come but before chip number 10. So this bottom test point here would be the BI of chip number 10, and oops, still got 1.78. So I'm just gonna try to figure out where the break in BI is. 1.78 again here. Moving all the way. Okay, that's weird. 1.78 again. So I don't really like using BI as an indicator of where the break might be, but I guess we are at that point now. So this is the before chip number 1. So this test point should definitely be a 0. Come on. I just gotta reconnect my board real quick. Sometimes the tester does that. It cannot start the board anymore. But maybe it's just because I go on off too quickly and gets confused. I don't know. Okay, sorry about that. So let's go back to yeah. So this is before board number 1, and if we look at the oh, do we have BI here? I guess we don't. We'll have it here though. And this would be the insidemost one over here. Make sure we're not touching anything else. Grab the test. And now I do. No, I still got 1.79. Interesting. So what happens if we? Let me remove that first heatsink and see what we got. Here, I'll give you guys the overhead. And to be honest, I'm not sure I should be pursuing that BI. Alright, let's go back to the microscope. Here's our chip number 1 that also looks like garbage. Give it a quick cleanup. Okay, so let's have a look at the service manual. I should probably know that off the top of my head which pin BI is, but I do not. Because like I said, I rarely use that. Let me just find a pin out. So this is a mode 0. Is this a mode 0? I guess. First domain should be a mode 0, right? Am I in the right manual? I am. Well, it doesn't make sense based on... So on a mode 0, BO is pin number 12, BI is pin number 25. So I thought that BI, and on a mode 1, it's pin 8. So let's have a look at pin 8 real quick. So I know that 7 is the one that's not connected, and this is 8. And sure enough, it goes to what is supposed to be the ground. And if I go resistance check between this test point and the main board negative, I got 0.3 ohms, which is basically the resistance in my test leads. So yeah, interesting. So I just learned something. So like I was expecting BI to be there, but I guess they call it ground on the board instead of BI. So which makes sense, right? Okay, so let's go back to voltage. I'm gonna fire up the test and see what voltage I have there relative to the main board negative, and it should be 0 volts because it should be a ground, which it is. And then moving on to, I don't have enough hands, this guy relative to board negative, I got 1.8. Huh, interesting. So somebody said something recently on the Discord saying that if a chip had an RO coming back to it, it would output BI as 0, and if it doesn't, then it would output it as 1. So just curious to see, try to confirm that theory, and I'm not sure I'm gonna have enough hands to do that. I'm gonna try not to short anything. So I'm putting one of my probes in the main board negative and try not to make it short over to the positive. Let me just try to do this. There you go. Okay, so what I'm going to actually, let me swap those two probes. Okay, and I'm going to take my jumpers at the same time. So I'm going to jump it over here. So I'm going to put 1.5 into RO after chip number 4, and at the same time I'm going to measure the BI after chip number 1 and see if that goes down from 1.8 to 0. Let's fire up the test. So I got 0.007 now. I got 4 chips on the tester. If I remove that, oh yeah, look at that, it goes up to 1.8. Okay. So that's actually a pretty good lesson, and it does confirm what that person said on the Discord. Sorry, I can't remember your name. I'll go find it and just splice it in the video maybe. Actually, I'll do that right now and just cut the video. Alright, so I just looked on Discord, the username, I just had to look for it, but guy's name is Ken MemH. Ken MemH. Super useful tip, and I just confirmed it. So you know how usually we measure signals to test if a chip is good or bad, right, between two chips, and as part of that we use BI that should be around 0 or a few millivolts, whatever. But what Ken MemH said, and what I just confirmed, which I didn't realize up until now, and is super useful info, is that your BI will be 0 if the chip gets an RI from the next chip over, and if it doesn't, then it's going to be 1.8. So the BO from a chip is really a consequence of the RO as opposed to a cause, right? So that means that we cannot use BI to troubleshoot a chip like I was trying to do with this chip number 11. So I'm glad I found that out, or I'm glad I confirmed that what Ken MH was saying. So awesome. All right, so back to our chip number 11 then. So basically, we know that chip in its BI is this BI? Yes. So or the BO of chip. Yeah, the BO of chip 10. So we know that it won't be 0. Like it's supposed to be 0 in perfect working conditions, but we know that it won't be 0 because it's not getting RO from this chip. So interesting. So okay, so let's measure again. Just because I kind of forgot where we were. So 0.9 for clock, 1.62, 1.71, and 1.6. Yeah, so the 1.6 is normal. We found that out. And if I look over here, sorry, wrong side to start from. Oh, I'm all confused now. Hold on. Oh, and now no, okay. Yeah, so 0.58 for clock, which is too low. 0.3 for CI, which is too low. 0.58 for reset, which is too low. And 0.002, which is actually good. But again, that's because this next chip is probably getting its RO. So we're gonna look here real quick. No 1.8, and right here no 0.8. Huh, that's interesting. Do I need to? Yes, I got 0.58 and 0. Okay, so we might have a 1.8 volt problem. So let's start at the beginning of the domain. 1.8, 0.8. Let's try after this chip. 1.8, 0.8. I'm keeping it on the tester, still says 0. And 0.5, no, 1.8, never mind. 0.8. Getting a little tight here. 1.8. 0.8, 1.8, 0.8. Yeah, so I just had a bad contact, looks like. 1.8, 0.8. Oh, but now I got 65 chips. Alright, we're going to let that cool down, and should I test again, or should I just change that chip number 11? Oh, I don't know. I always like to confirm before I change chips for no reason, but this chip is obviously in rough shape. See, like the solder isn't even sticking anymore in some places, so the copper is definitely coming off slowly. So I'm going to go ahead and change that and go from there. Okay, this is the donor board, so this is going to be a used chip, just because that board, in my opinion, doesn't deserve any more new chips, especially since I'm doing that for free basically at this point. So I'm gonna get that chip off. So I'm gonna show you guys, give you a couple tips at the same time, maybe if you're new to taking chips off, on and off, whatever. So what I do, I'm gonna wait for all the pins to get really shiny. Then I'm going to grab it, and then I'm going to rotate, right? I don't know if that's obvious on the camera, but I'm going to take it and just peel it off from one side while I rotate on my tweezers. And so that's going to give me the best chance of leaving enough solder on the pins. So there we go, we rotate, and if you look at, even the pins on the boards are still nice and round. And the pins on the chip also are. So I don't put it down yet, obviously, because it's all the solder is melted on it. So just wait a couple seconds, blow on it to cool it down faster. Okay, and then I put it on my little plate. Now I'm gonna get the board. We are going to position that, which I feel is about here. Okay. A little bit of flux. the air again. Now I want to position my chip that I'm going to put on in the right orientation, so I can just grab it and make sure it's the right way, obviously. And so same thing for this chip, right? We want to, if you grab it and you slide it sideways, then that's going to be a mess. You're going to lose all your solder on the board, and it's going to be a real pain to just go ahead and rework the board, add some solder, and it's just not very efficient, obviously. So ideally, if you could lift it like straight up and gently, it would be the best, but I don't think it's really possible or really convenient to do that. So I can feel it's still on the bottom there. It's still pretty hard to move, so I'm just going to wait a couple more seconds for that solder to become really liquid, and then I do the same thing. I just rotate, and then like this. So this chip's going to be garbage, and now I got a few moments to wait for the pins to be all melted again, especially like on the bottom left and right there. You can see that there's still some peaks, well, everywhere I guess on the right side, and we're just gonna wait a little bit more. This bottom left couple pins are not very inspiring. Yeah, there they go slowly. Okay, so I'm going to tweak the angle of the chip on my tweezers just to an angle where I'm comfortable, and then I'm just going to hover it, kind of try to center it left to right, and put it roughly where it's going to go. Whoa, shaky. Oh, and see, it snapped in the wrong place, so might have a second chance at this. There we go. That was much better. And then I'm going to gently tap it. And now see, it's not moving, it's solid. So we're going to call that good. Turn off the air. So what happened the first time basically is that there was probably like a flux bubble or something underneath, and it pushed the chip one way, and then from the surface tension, then it just snapped into a position that wasn't the right one, obviously. So we're gonna wait a couple seconds just so the board or the solder solidifies again before we touch that. Let's have a quick look under the microscope, see what that looks like. So it was literally maybe like a minute, just long enough that I won't mess up everything when I touch it. I'm gonna clean up our flux because that is what separates us from animals, right? So now I look at the pins, they all seem to be okay. So me dropping the chip in the wrong place didn't seem to have any consequence, which is good. Because it's not a big deal if you have to rework the board. It's just more time and more effort, and nobody got time for that, you know what I mean? So might as well do it right the first time. Alright, so let's zoom right in on there. Those all look nice, and these are a little short, but they still look good. And I mean, I'm being picky right now, we're like zoomed away, and alright, so I'm gonna let that cool down because it's still really hot from the hot air, and I'm gonna put the tester on it and see what that says. So hopefully you have 65, and if we do, I think I'm just gonna put in the minor and see if it drops again, because this board was dropping like constantly. It was only taking like a few minutes to like an hour maybe at the most. It did seem like it got worse and worse progressively, so hopefully And that's a good thing, because I mean, you can't fix a board when you don't know what the problem is. So hopefully it broke for good, and hopefully we just found what the problem was this whole time, maybe, hopefully. And by fixing it, then it shouldn't drop again, if that was the problem. So, okay, so let's let that cool down, and we will be back. Okay, and we're back. It's actually been a little while. My battery was dead on camera, so I had to charge a little bit so I can finish the video, but I took that opportunity to put back the heatsink on chip number 1, since I took it off just to chase that BI problem, and now that I know that it's not a problem, then yeah, so put it back on, and let's see how many chips we got. 65, which is good. So yeah, so I'm gonna put the heatsink back on, and the board is like literally completely cool right now, so that's kind of encouraging that it's at 65. But I'm gonna throw it in the miner, and hopefully, fingers crossed, that's the end of the problems for this board. But all I know is that I did catch that chip specifically that was bad. You know, that was not passing the signals over to the next chip. So I know for a fact that that was a problem at the time that I diagnosed it. And so if I put it back in the miner and it drops again, and I troubleshoot it, and I find another error, another fault anywhere else, then that's basically going to tell me that this board either, you know, is basically unfixable, and I'm really just about to give up on it. So fingers crossed. We'll put the heatsink back on, throw in the miner, and I will let you guys know what happened. Alright guys, so unfortunately that did not work. I didn't even have time really to do anything. As soon as I put in the miner, first time it booted up, it detected 0 ASICs on that board. So so that got me questioning, really. So right now I'm at the point where you know, I'm thinking the problem is probably somewhere else, but where exactly, I'm not sure. And I was looking back, or thinking back on that last test I did when I went for chip 11. And if you recall, I was measuring the 1.8 volt at one point, and then that's where the board turned, started working again, and then I decided to just go ahead and replace the chip, regardless, because that chip didn't look the greatest. But you know, I'm just thinking maybe I was onto something there, but why in that domain specifically? Not sure. And I know with this board, like I've been troubleshooting like all over the boards, right? Whether it's like a chip towards the end of the chain or toward the beginning of the chain. So even if that specific 1.8 volt wasn't working at the time, last time I checked it earlier in the video, you know, like the problem wasn't specific to this area of the board. So I'm looking for something like higher level. And I know the 1.8 LDOs, they use domain voltages as inputs, but I've already measured the domain voltages previously. You know, in other like previous troubleshooting, and that was all fine. So really not sure what to make out of it. So anyway, so I'm gonna go ahead and do domain voltages again, and I'm hoping to, I wonder if I can put this here for you guys. Yeah, backlight, yeah, slightly better. Actually, let me, all right, I'm hoping to be able to measure all of them before the board starts working again. I'm not even sure if it's working or not right now, because I didn't fire up the tester, but I'm gonna get ready and go for it. Oh, see this one, nope, yeah, there we go. So right here, which funny is that's where I was measuring last time I was troubleshooting this. So I had what, like 0.6 volts, and it went up to 1.8 for like a second. So so measuring from this to this, I always get confused. So let me go from trace to trace right here. No, one, oh yeah, now we got 65 again. So we might be on to something, but yeah, the board just started working again, so I guess we'll let it cool down. I like to put it sideways like this so that heat doesn't get trapped on the bottom, although there really isn't that much heat right now in it, but I'm gonna have to think about that again, because I always get confused when you measure from the top of the chip if you're measuring ground to ground or positive to positive. So because the top of the chip isn't really ground per se, I know that. Maybe I'll do like a quick resistance check. Yeah, so between the top of the chip and its actual ground, you got 300 ohms. And between the top of the chip and its positive, you got 310 ohms. So it's basically like right in between. So that's too bad. So I was curious to see which domain. Well, maybe it's the third one, because that's where I was working on my chip 11. So that would make sense that it's the third domain. But let's see if this guy is back to 0 by any chance. Nope. Alright, so more testing to follow. If that is indeed the 1.8 LDO in the third domain, then my next step is going to be to figure out where the input to this guy comes from. It's usually like a couple domains up the chain, I think. So if I go from the input, which is pin 5 of the LDO, and then I want, what do I want for voltage though? Just like, not for voltage, but for domain. So 1.1 ohm to its neighboring domain, but that would only be 1.5 volt input, which is not enough. You can't make 1.8 volt out of 1.5 volt with a regulator. 0.4, oh, getting there. 0.9. So you know I got 0.4 ohms to this domain. Oh, I got 0.8 now. Come on. Switch. And I'm trying not to touch everything, because that can give you false results also, especially when you're dealing with smaller resistances like this. Yeah, so that would be what? 1, 2, 3, 4 domains further. Sorry, I'm struggling to keep that on there, so if you look at the resistance, that's still good, yeah. Okay, so we got, a few ohms. So 1 ohm is starting to be pretty low, and then you got this one that's like 0.3 ohms. That's literally the resistance in my leads, right? So that's the exact same value. So that means that pin 5, and we said that it was 1, 2, 3, 4 domains further, and because I'm on this heatsink, so that's really the ground of this domain, which is really the positive of the previous domain. So we know that, and that's all kind of new information to me, but 1, 2, 3 domains is where it's taking its value as a positive. And so if we say, let's say 1.5 volt per domain you're supposed to have, so times 3, that's 4.5 volts. And I think that's usually what you see at pin 5 here, about 4.5 volts relative to the ground of that domain. So if I didn't have 1.8 volt there, I mean, either there's a problem with this power section, or I'm not getting the 4.5 volts as input, right, from this guy. And then in turn, what could cause the one or this domain voltage to not be there? Either a shorted capacitor. So if you look on the back here, there's these big, sorry, I have a little off frame there, but between each, not between each, but there's a couple of those bigger capacitors. I think there's only two actually. I thought there was three, but I only see two right now. So there's these bigger capacitors. Actually, let me grab a donor board. I don't know if I got one that, nope. All right, so there's these bigger, like those flat capacitors. They're tantalum capacitors, and they go across the domains. So if the ones that go between, so this was my guy that I was suspecting on the third domain, which I know it's taking its input voltage from the sixth domain. So if either the capacitors between domain 6 and domain 5 are shorting out, then but I'm still gonna have voltage though, because that's just a voltage divider from 20 something volts here to ground over here. So anyway, so to not get this, not get a voltage there, I'm not sure what that means. You would almost have to have like 3 shorted domains back to back for the capacitors, or actually you could have just a chip. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 domain, somewhere on that domain, if there's a chip that's shorting out, so that's gonna collapse this domain voltage, but you're still gonna have a voltage relative to domain number 3 though. So anyway, something to keep in mind. Let's just have a look quickly. Let's grab the tester again and see. Oh, not in resistance. Okay, so I got 5 volts and I still had zero ASICs, right? So see, just waiting like a couple minutes and the board's at 0 ASICs again. So I'm gonna look at the 1.8 on this domain, and I got a solid 1.8 and still no ASICs. Or was it? No, it was that domain. So it's possible that I have, actually let me go at the vary output. Yeah, see, nothing there. Or do I just have a bad connection? Let's go to the microscope. Alright, here's a little crash course on LDOs. So this is our suspicious guy. Let me just check that you guys can see. Yeah, okay. So you got your 1.8 volt LDO, which is this guy. Pin 2, so this is pin number 1 with the dot on the PCB, right? So this is pin number 2, this is your ground, which is the ground of this domain. Opposite of pin 2 is pin 5, which is the input, so that should be your 5 volts. That's taken from a couple domains upward. And then pin 6 is your output, and then it goes through this inductor. And then you can't really see the trace right now because there's that coating on it, but then it comes through this guy, which is FB7, which is a ferrite break, and that's basically just like a filter. And then after that, you know, some of it is split to go back to pin 3, which is like a feedback pin, and then eventually the traces go to like one of these 2 holes in here and go across the board. I'm pretty sure it's one of those 2, or maybe it's those 2 here. Anyway, doesn't matter. So what I just did, I poked there, which is like basically the output of the LDO. I had my 1.8, and then what I said, let me check at the output. I came here but now I see that there's a lot of coating on it, so maybe I just wasn't all the way through. Yeah, I don't think I was, so I don't think I found the real problem, but let's have a look. No, 1.8 and still 0 ASIC, so we don't have a problem with our LDO. Oh yeah, let me check domain voltages again. This time right from the traces. So I got 1 point, oh yeah, now I got 65, so alright. So I mean maybe we're onto something, I'm not sure. Yeah, I'll cut the video here and let the board cool down again, and I'll be back. Okay, it's much later in the day now. I was thinking about what I should do as the next troubleshooting step, and so I just went on like a data gathering mission, right? Not really know what I was looking for, but still trying to measure stuff. So so the board is completely cool now because I actually had to charge the battery to the camera. So the board had the time to completely cool down, and then what I did off camera was measuring the resistance across the domains. So that's from trace to trace on each side of the domains, and all of those were chicken good, around an ohm, 1 ohm more or less. And so did all that. Sorry, I'm just having a bad contact again on some of those, but anyway, did all of them. Like I said, didn't find anything suspicious, and then I started measuring from the top of the chip to the 1.8 volt capacitor, and I know I'm expecting around 1 to 1.2K, maybe like 0.9K to 1.2K. And this is a test that I used to, sorry, wrong cap. So 1.5, a little bit high, but still not a big deal, right? See, this one 3K is definitely high. 0.9, 0.9, and then I came across this one, 6 domain, which is not even in the right ballpark. It's at 110 ohms. So there's definitely a problem there. But is that problem enough to cause our problems? Not sure. 1K, 0.9K, 1K, 1K, 0.9K, 1K, and 1K. So this guy is really suspicious right now at 110 ohms. So this is between the 1.8 volt pin and the top of the chip. And so just to confirm, so I tried to the top of the first chip. Oh, wrong one, sorry. I tried to the top of the first chip, 110 ohms. I'm thinking maybe it's the top of the heatsink that has bad connection, so I tried another heatsink, 157, another heatsink, 87, another heatsink, 209, another heatsink, 157. So actually this chip with the lowest resistance is even more suspicious now. But anyway, so I think what I'm gonna do, so I'm not gonna power this on right now. I think what I'm gonna do, I might go to this domain, this LDO, take off, like break the path out of the 1.8 volt, and basically separate this section that has the LDO from the chips, and then measure both sides and see what I get basically. So I'm gonna do that right now. Get the microscope. 3, 4, 5, 6. So here's our guy right here. And I know that Let me find my tweezers. I know that this component right here is on the... Actually, I could take off the coil just because it's easier to handle. All right, let's do that. 3, 4, 5, 6. Just a little bit of flex. I should get it. Change my settings for that because I don't want too much air. Try to bring the flux back a little bit. There we go. Alright, so I'm going to put the coil aside, and then I should be able to do the same measurements from the top of the heatsink here, which is ground, to this. So this is the chip side. I got 8.2 ohms. If I go on the other one, I got 150K. So the 1.8 volt resistance through the LDO is 175K. It's going up because it's warm. Well, it's cooling down now, so it's creeping up. But if I look on the output side, so this side goes through the filter here, and then through one of those holes back to the chip, or going to the chip. And then I still get 8 ohms, which sounds like not a whole lot, honestly. Let's go back on the other side of the board, and let's do our same measurement. 3, 4, 5, 6. So from this to this. Yeah, still got 58 ohms, so definitely not enough. So I think my next step is to remove the chips on this domain one by one and see which one is causing the short. So I am going to do that. I gotta be smart about this because the 1.8 is coming from this end. I think I want to start taking the chips off from the other end, and then after I remove each chip, measure the resistance. So 3, 4, 5, 6. And maybe we're gonna find a solder ball somewhere. Maybe we're gonna find something really obvious. Okay, let's see if we can find anything. So I see a solder ball there, but I'm not sure that was a problem, really. Could have been. I guess we'll measure the resistance in a second and we'll see. So I'm looking for like this corner pin, which is the 1.8 coming from this capacitor. So this is where I was measuring earlier. I'm actually going to measure again right now. So from top of chip to 1.8. So I got 38 ohms still, which is way too low. I'm looking at those corner pins. That chip's definitely been replaced. It's a little off to one side, but not a big deal. Actually, that chip also looks kind of suspicious. And look at the solder balls on that guy. Yikes. Alright, so visually they all look more or less the same. there's no like huge smoking gun. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this last chip and then take a measurement after that and see what we got. A resistance measurement, that is. Okay, so this is the chip that's the furthest away from the LDO in that domain. I'm gonna pull it off real quick. I would be very surprised if this chip was the problem, but you never know. Okay, so last chip here is missing. Now if we look at our, well, still 100 ohms more or less, so that is not the problem. That chip was not the problem, so I'm going to put it back on and remove the second one. Okay. I'm really careful because everything is still pretty liquid. And if I look, sorry, I was just watching if my head was in the way. And there we go. So now we got a good 1.5K. So either that chip was the problem or the install was the problem. But so I'm just gonna put another chip on that one and see where that goes. Okay, here we are, donor board. That chip looks really nice, so I'm not worried about it. I'm just gonna harvest it. And then immediately try to put it on the other board. Okay, I'm going to turn off the air. Get that off of there. And then I don't know if you noticed, but I did. There's a bridge on those couple of pins, so we need to clean that up. I'm going to fire up the iron. Wait for the beep. Where is my, there it is. Okay. So that leaves the pin a little bit dry, unfortunately, but that's the best we can do. That capacitor looks like it's been tweaked before. Come on. Okay, I'll come back to that anyway. So let's measure. So now it's still pretty hot. So our values might be a little tweaked. I'm gonna put this on this side. And now if I look at my 1.8, I got 0.9K right where it's supposed to be. And this is the value for the 0.8, which varies, but that's fine. So there you go, 0.9K. So we know there was something weird going on with either that chip or the installation of that chip. And so that's fixed now. So we're just gonna clean up our flux. That is not the one I'm looking at. This is the one. Remember, always clean up your flux. You're gonna thank yourself next time you're in there working on that same board again. And what about this side? That looks fine. No ridges, nothing's touching. Here, I guess it is a lot of solder, but nothing's touching again. That is good. Alright, need to clean up some flux over here. Okay, so I'll finish cleaning up and put the heat sinks back on maybe. Or actually before I put the heat sinks back on, I'm just gonna test it, let it cool down, test it, and then I will bring you back. Okay, so the board has cooled down a little bit. And I'm gonna bring this into frame. Let's see what we got. So we got 65, but we know that that doesn't really mean that it's fixed. So what I'm gonna do now is put all the heat sinks back on and probably go throw in the miner. But before I do that, we're gonna have one last look at the resistance here on our 1.8. And there you go, 0.9K. So that is what I'm expecting. Oh, and also I did go back and reinstalled the coil on the other side. So did do that. So yeah, I'm gonna put the heat sinks back on and see what happens. And actually I'm gonna put the results of this in the video description. That's gonna be it for the video right now because I know it's gonna be a bit of a longer video. So go have a look at the description and you get to see if that worked or not. Okay, have a good one.